Hey there, welcome to Use the Whole Road Stories of Women in Health IT. Hi, I'm Teresa Younkin, your host and fellow adventurer on this incredible journey. This podcast was created so that we as women in community could share stories. Why? Because we want to learn from each other how to elevate our skills, how to get exposed to new innovations, how to be inspired, and how to inspire others. So it doesn't matter if you've been in the industry 2 months or 20 years. I hope these stories will inspire you to create the career that you really want. I'm so excited to have Nan Solomons here with me today. Nan and I have known each other for years, and she has always just been a fount of knowledge and practicality. And I'm so excited that she's here with us today. Hi, Nan. How are you?
Hi, Teresa. Thank you. I'm fine. It's great to be with you. And usually our conversation is over emails, face to face, even if it's virtual, is a treat.
It definitely is. So, the point of the podcast is for us to tell our stories. And you have a pretty cool story. So, do you want to go ahead and start and tell me a little bit about how you arrived at this point in health IT?
It's been a long and winding road, to quote one of those Beatles. And I started out with a degree in theater. I built sets and hung lights and whatever else they needed me to do, move scenery. I was not an actress, except I did take an acting class or two. And anyway, so I did that. And I often get the question of, what does a theater degree have to do with this? The short answer is time management, deadlines. And I learned a lot about how to work within teams, across teams, and difficult personalities, as well as managing my time and figuring out what I needed to do. And also, no job was too small because you had to get the work done because opening night was going to be imminent. And I used to do well without sleep, not so much anymore. From there, I went to work as an admin for a small startup in Kendall Square, Cambridge. And having done enough retail work, you just learn the story and you'd hear the question and hear the response. And I would be taking calls like that. I worked my way up from admin to on the hotline to managing the hotline to implementing and supporting. One of my favorite projects was for Bell South in Ecuador. And I was in Ecuador for on and off for 6 months or so. My Spanish got really good. All the cobwebs came out of that. But again, it was being able to work with third parties, to work with the C-suite, to work with the people on the ground doing the work, and being able to understand or change my conversation depending on who, and my language, of course. From there, the internet bubble burst in about 2002. They thought it was 2000, but alas, it was 2002. And I had to retool. Epic was just beginning to come out. I got a master's in health policy. It was many years after undergrad, and I did a certificate and then went on. So health policy was great because you could understand what happens if you push one place. Oh, let's decrease length of stay. But no one said, oh, what's the impact on the bottom line for the hospitals? Having that forest kind of view for things was a huge help. I thought I'd go work for Epic and apply my software support and implementation skills, but alas, no clinical knowledge. Therefore, I took a job actually in a hospital system, and I got it through my connections in school. So don't underestimate your connections. And I got a job in the Center for Quality and Safety. I had an amazing boss and an amazing team. We all had different skills. And I learned a lot about how to do the work behind the scenes to get the answer you wanted or the result. So a lot of skid greasing or politicking, depending on where you come from.
I love
And
that.
and so I did a lot. I learned a lot about how to help people change minds, how to do the work I used to do in software support. Ask your buddy, because we know the documentation is terrible and not applicable. Have you ever heard about? So getting health systems, little hospitals to work with each other to do patient rounding and things like that. So that's where I started. I went to enough conferences and realized that people up there with PhDs were no smarter than I was. And I went for a PhD in health innovation through the College of Nursing.
I think that's amazing. I just to say that, like, the path that you've taken has been definitely not straight. I love the
Ever.
fact that you were in a situation and could recognize what you needed to do next to take that next step, even though it was outside of what people would think is a normal path.
It definitely works. When I got to the College of Nursing at Arizona State, they did not know what to do with me. I do not have any clinical experience except stories. While I used to say my job was social work for software, I could not say that once I moved into healthcare because someone would get offended, I'm sure. And there I ended up looking at social networks. So, who talks to whom, communication patterns, and realizing that what I knew from my software world, they were experts in one thing or another, and they were always the go to people. The same thing happens in nursing. And that while we want evidence based practice, there's a combination of what the book says or what the literature says and what the lived experience says. Understanding
Exactly.
who those people are, as well as understanding the people who block that new knowledge, looking at those patterns and being able to read an organization and say, oh, they're very flat and new stuff comes in, or they're very hierarchical and there's one way in and one way out. And you got to influence the top dog there to make changes happen. That's how I came here with a PhD. The only place to go was academia. And that was, I thought healthcare was the dark side. I think academia is even darker and a little bit more stuck. That's where I am. I'm trying to do my best to get health informatics students to speak both clinical IT and to be able to call the other party on when they're not making sense.
That is such a skill to have. And I'm so glad to hear it coming from somebody who is teaching, who's involved in academia, because many of us do see that. You get into a classroom and then you're like, whoa, but this doesn't reflect what I'm doing in my job every day. But having the foreknowledge, and I think you are a great example of taking that knowledge and applying it any way that you can to make sure that you're making change and that you can shift the boat in some way. Every program that we've talked about that you've been involved in, practicum is very important. So you need to be able to actually say that you've walked your talk. What's one big challenge that you've found over the years in your different positions and places that you've had to overcome?
I think the fact that I don't look typical when you look at my job, when you look at my resume. I'm definitely not typical. I have moved around from telecom billing to computer aided software design way back in the day to being someone who's not clinical and with a PhD through a college of nursing. And when I got there, they said, this is not informatics. We're not doing that. That's fine because when people think informatics, they think programming. I can't program my way out of a paper bag, but I can ask you a whole lot of questions to make you program your way out of said bag. And so my challenge is getting people to understand me and to understand how I think differently and pull from, man, a variety of places. So the policy is huge. To
Mhm.
bring that in, quality is another one. And then understanding context. When I just gave a talk to undergrads about data science and analytics, and I said, that's one thing, but the graph only will tell you where to look. And getting people to think differently, I think, is my biggest challenge.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's true, especially when you're bringing in knowledge from other industries to help your industry move forward. I get a lot of questions from different people. They'll reach out and say, hey, I've got this informatics degree, but I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with it. Or they'll say, I've been in this one position for 20 years and I know I want to do something different and I've got ideas, but I don't know what to do with it. What would you tell them?
I would tell them a couple of things. Informatics is not all coding, it's a spectrum. So those who do a lot of coding in data science really are probably data scientists and have that degree. But there's something more. There's the analysis and building the graphs and working with clinicians or others to figure out what they want. That's requirements gathering. It might be reporting. It might be troubleshooting. It might be teaching. It might be designing screens. all of that. It might be talking to end users to help them, being that support at the elbow,
Mhm.
which is so key. There's
Yeah.
a very interesting article by Knudsen and colleagues, I think written very recently in Denmark, and they talk about the need for special people to help with the technology. It's the last mile. And I can drop the EHR in, and from my perspective as a developer, it works great. But when I drop it onto a site and they say, "What is this thing that's bigger than a bread box?" And I have to change the way I work. So all of that preparation is still informatics. That's one piece. The second piece I'd say is figure out what you like to do, and you have to be able to pitch it. So what do I bring to you? And what are my skills? And why is that value add?
That's great. Do you find that people being able to identify and refine that for themselves, that it's difficult? You deal with mostly adult students in
Yes.
graduate programs, and having people think about their mindsets and changing that mindset from "I'm just a fill in the blank," because you're not just a fill in the blank. You are a specialized set of skills and a unique human being. And the beauty of it is that you've got all this extra that goes along with it. So, how do you help people to get out of that saying of "I'm just a blank" and help them see the bigger, larger, expanded opportunities available to them?
One of the things I tell people to do is to go on a site like Indeed or Glassdoor or Indoor, as I just merged the two. So what I think about is to say, what are the skills that you have, and then look for the jobs. Because I was just doing a virtual open house for the program, and this woman said, "Oh, I've got HIM experience, and I've got this, and I've got that, and I want to do informatics. But I also want to do public health." And I said, "You can do informatics and public health. You can do what you do anywhere or any position." So, with a degree in informatics, having some programming, some support skills, some project management skills, go work in insurance, go work for a tech startup,
Yeah,
go outside of the box and go work for pharma or something that's totally non healthcare, or build that little app because
that's great. I just want to point out to the listeners that was a piece of gold that you just said. Go out and look for things that use your skills, and then you can be anything that you want. I like that a lot. It's a different way of looking at it, saying, "I've got the skills and I can fit anywhere."
the
Go
other
ahead.
part is to network. I think I've gotten my last 5 or 6 jobs based on relationships. Do things like go back to your LinkedIn profile, see who your
Yep.
friends are, and then see who their friends are and who they're connected to. So there's a little bit of following the trail around
Mhm.
that to see who's working where. You might find an interesting company that's not hiring, but if you can talk to someone there and
Exactly.
say, "These are the skills. I may not be an informatics person, or I am an informatics person, but I could work elsewhere and do something else for you."
Yeah. Again, right? It's what's that core set of skills that you have, and then always highlighting what more you can bring. You know that I'm a technophile, love technology, and always involved in thinking about it in the context of healthcare. Of course, AI is hot on everybody's tongue. It's on everybody's mind. And organizations are really starting to look at how can they use AI. And I think our first challenge is defining what artificial intelligence means, in what context, in what arenas, in what industries. It means something different everywhere. What are your thoughts about AI and what's happening in the healthcare world right now?
I have mixed feelings about AI. I have to say that I love ChatGPT and Bard to take a letter that I've written where I'm really ticked off and get them to smooth it out for me. I'm also thrilled when it helps me organize my thoughts that are all over the map. On the other hand, I'm not sure I want it to diagnose my symptoms for me. I know enough to be dangerous and know enough to ask questions. So I'd want to know, can you explain the algorithm? Who's in the data set? If I am indigent and I show up and your training data set is full of privileged people of a single race and not multiracial and not a boatload of comorbidities and ages. Thank you, but no thank you. The same goes for imaging. I think it's great for imaging, but
Mhm.
who's in the training set? Skin tone,
Yeah.
age, social determinants of health, ACEs, all of that. If you have a melting pot of a data set, I'm more interested. If it's not and you don't care, I'm going somewhere else. And I think for right now, everything looks like a nail if you have a hammer in your hand. So at this point, you've got to think about what you want to use it for and where it does things well. I know that I was just at the American Medical Informatics Summit in Boston.
Yeah.
A lot of talk about AI and equitable AI. Some people were talking about, I think there was one study where they used AI to write the responses on the portal.
Mhm.
And some docs said, I wouldn't, this is not how I talk. My patients would know that's not me. Again, how do you use it and what do you need it for? Is it time saving for documentation? Is it pulling the right stuff? I
Yeah.
think we have to look at it very carefully. I'm not anti tech, but sometimes pencil and paper is really a good tool.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe so too. And I think that we have a challenge in our data sets that we have now because sometimes we only take the best of the best, especially if we've got funding and we've got projects, and those projects become evidence-based medicine later down the road. And that can be a real challenge because I don't know how many papers are written from failure. Many of the ones that people point to are all the successes. And there's a lot of good data in failure. I don't think that we can throw the baby out with the bathwater anymore. I think that we have to take in all the information that's coming in and all those data and then actually get a real picture of what's happening in our world.
Absolutely. And I think fail early, fail hard, and fail fast is
Exactly.
is really the mantra. But it's also very important because we all learn from our mistakes. And
Yeah.
that you can also understand that most of the AI is coming from the US and China. And so it's not a full picture. If you were in sub-Saharan Africa, that's different. And also the data sets work differently. If you take it from one hospital in town and
Mhm.
take that training set and move it somewhere else, it's not going to work.
Exactly. That's one of I think the biggest lessons I've learned working in Smart on Fire apps is that I've learned that medicine's not practiced the same everywhere that you go, even within the United States. It depends on where the physician trained, where did you do your fellowship?
It's definitely a challenge. And in fact, there's a wonderful site, the Dartmouth Health Atlas, that talks about the changes and that you've got more back surgery in Florida than you do in Iowa, for example. So understanding those variations and maybe it's not a one size fits all,
Yeah.
and we have to really adjust. And maybe this is the AI if you're working in Asia. This is
Mhm.
the AI that you want if you're working with older adults with this
Yeah.
particular illness. I think that we have to stratify it a little bit more.
Yeah. I would agree. The data is only good as it is collected and manipulated. That's for sure.
And you can lie with statistics. So there you go.
Exactly. How do you think AI is going to change the playing field for women in this space?
On the internet, no one knows you're a dog. That's the first answer I would say. I would also say that I think it could change.
Yeah.
Again, you can be a little bit more anonymous on it. Maybe we need training sets of just women's data. So could we make the Barbie film using that mindset where it's all women, and what does that look like? And what does the
Yeah.
data say? And what kind of diseases show up? I think we need to do a lot more experimentation with that, more trials to see. Nothing's ready for prime time, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. And I like the idea. Women are Gosh, we are the people who know most about what's going on in our families medically, health histories. We have an opportunity because we have a lot of knowledge. I do think that the more holistic that we start to become, the doors will open because we start to take more chances because we actually have knowledge. taking what you've done personally and applying it to your professional life because it's valuable data and it's valuable insight. There is a switch now because we're starting to look at things like SDOH, that it's not always about the empirical data. It's about the anecdotal data. And that anecdotal data, if people want to put it, it's all that unstructured, rich data that lives out
Mhm.
there.
The other thing I'd say is that when you look at the AI, you wanna know who is on the development team. So often it's a data scientist and a statistician, but no clinician. So you
Well,
want everyone at the table, probably even a patient or 2, so that you get a
exactly.
real 360 view.
I agree. I agree. Let's see. What advice would you give to women who are starting in health IT or in AI right now?
I would say be yourself, don't be subservient. I went to a women's college, and as I majored in theater, but one of the things that I liked to be able to do was use power tools, and my dad would never let me. I did some summer stock, and I had, at a university, and a football player needed some credits. He was probably a defense guy. He needed some credits, and he said, "Oh, let me run that through the saw for you." And I said, "No, I'm perfectly capable of doing that myself. Thank you." And pushed him aside. So being clear and being strong about your beliefs, you don't want to be a jerk about it,
Yeah,
but you want to be clear, you want to be articulate and authentic. So that's my advice. Learn as much as you can. YouTube is your friend. The
yep,
W3C school is your friend. There's a ton of free stuff out there. Learn it, come prepared, and probably over prepared, and be on time.
that's awesome. I love that at the end. Be on time. That's huge. Nan, thank you so much. How can people find you?
I think the best way to find me is either my LinkedIn profile or my email is nan.solomons@gmail.com. And I'm always looking forward to connecting with others and having conversations.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll make sure to put your contact information into the show notes so that
Okay?
everybody can find you. I want to thank you so much for your time. Time is valuable. I understand that, but also for sharing your story with other women. Again, your journey has been very, very curvy. And I absolutely love that because it makes us just such interesting human beings. I learned some new things about you that I didn't know and absolutely love that, and absolutely love your take on what's going on out there. You are at the heart of academia right now, and everybody in AI is looking towards academia and the researchers and saying, "Oh, we have to look to them to see what we're doing." And I love the fact that you're being very real about the data sets that are out there, the technology that's out there, and not just shaking the tambourine and shouting it from the mountaintops, but encouraging people to be thoughtful about how they use these new technologies. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have relationships and we don't
It's
have
the
communication and humanity, no amount of technology is going to fix those problems in our
not
world.
not at all. So I wanna thank you for your friendship and this opportunity. And I
Most
think
definitely.
I think for those who are listening or watching, I would say, again, be your authentic self. Bring everything that you can to the table and, don't give up.
I hope all of you enjoyed Nan's story as much as I did. And I got so excited, I forgot to ask her the spark question. What is the song that gets you started when you need a little pick me up? And Nan's answer was Roar by Katy Perry. So I'm going to go ahead and add that one to our Spotify playlist. All right. We've reached the part of the podcast where I talk about an AI tool that I use. Sometimes when you've got really good ideas or you're trying to get a thought out, the hardest part is just to get started. And I found that sometimes I've got ideas or I've got several different ideas. I'm not sure how to formulate it, how to make the idea tighter, how to make the thoughts tighter, maybe the flow tighter. One of the things that I found is that I can use presentation software that's powered by AI to get those juices flowing. And I have to say, as with any AI tool, it's not just about a plug and play. You have to have an idea of where you want to go and where you want to take your audience. So, like any good presentation, I would suggest that you start with an outline and then have the AI help you fill in the blanks. Let's get started. There are many different types of AI presentation software out there. I want to go over Beautiful AI. It's one that I've used in the past, and it's presentation software that's powered by AI. It functions very similar to the other products on the market that we're used to that are not powered by AI or maybe have a co-pilot. Other sites that have been suggested are simplified.com, slidebean.com, Gamma AI, and Designs AI. I'll put links down into the description. Just to let you know, if you want to use any of these, you need to check out the pricing. Some have free trials, some don't. I will say that all of them, you're going to have to leave your email address. So I've gone ahead and I've entered in my email address. I verified it, and then it's going to collect some information about the types of presentations that I want. So I'll say, what am I going to be using it for? Is it work, academic, or personal? I'll just say work, and I'll give them my company name, company size, because of course, this is all information for them to help improve their products. Company name, company size, what my role is in the company. Right now, we're a startup. I'm a company. Founder CEO, how often do you create presentations? I do those weekly. What best describes the content that you're planning on? Fundraising, sales pitch, process and training, onboarding, team and company meeting. Use cases here that you can tap into. Let's see, you can do a single presentation or a single graphic or infographic. Let's just say I want to do a process training and onboarding. And how did I hear about it? I recommended it to myself. Here you can use the 14-day free trial. Okay, we're going to get started here. We can create a new slide. As you can see, you've got lots of choices. For those of you that are listening and not watching the podcast, I'm walking through creating a slide with Beautiful.ai, including generating text and replacing it on the slides and changing slide formatting. AI is a helper for the processes that you are already doing. You can find more links down in the episode description. All right, you guys, thanks for joining me, and stay tuned for the next episode. Let's make a difference together. Hit that subscribe button, share with your friends, and let's use every inch of the road ahead. And as we part today, I leave you with the words of Edward Everett Hale. I'm only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. Thanks for joining me. Remember, we're in this together. Connect with us on Instagram at Real Teresa Younkin and on LinkedIn for a weekly dose of health IT insights. Until next time, keep blazing your trail, because when we use the whole road, there's no limit to what we can achieve.